Next, we'll be looking at a number of things. When Paul wrote to Timothy, he spoke of the future times. And he said, but the Spirit explicitly says that in later times, which from the standpoint of Paul would be the period we're in now, even in the days of Paul. We tend to think of it in a different way, but the Spirit explicitly or openly or plainly, without figure, says that in later times some will apostasantai tennis, actually, because tennis is connected there. In the latter times, certain ones will fall away. They will step away, pistaos, from the faith. Why? Because they are paying attention. They are going after deceitful spirits of deception and doctrines of demons. And so the fact that you can find people who once made a profession professing deceitful and demonic teachings should not surprise us. Not going to take the time to go to 1 John 2 and talk about they went out from us. I've spoken about that a number of times, and I think it's quite relevant and important to review those things every once in a while, because one of the main things that troubles believers in our day is seeing apostasy, is seeing people who once made profession. Automatically makes any one of us go, what about me? Could I do something like that? And that's a natural question to ask, and it's a proper and natural thing to be concerned about. But mere profession does not mean possession. And certainly the older I have gotten, the more I have become convinced that the proof is in the pudding, and the pudding takes a long time to cool out of the oven. Got to give things time. And God has all the time in the world. We're the ones that are in a hurry. So be patient, observe, resist the constant pressure of the world to speak quickly. That's just the very nature of social media, I'm afraid. Anyway, and by means of the hypocrisy of liars, suta logon, those who speak lies, having in their own consciences been seared with a hot iron. Now, that's a pretty strong phrase, but certainly Paul had encountered many false teachers who had gone out, just as John did. And it is a strange thing to talk to someone who you may have known during their period of professed orthodoxy, possibly, would be one way of putting it. In fact, maybe there was someone in your own fellowship, in your own church, and you knew them at that time. You shared the Lord's Supper with them, did ministry with them, whatever it might be. And now you talk to them, and they've become insensitive. The strongest words of warning that you can bring to them from Scripture just leave them unmoved, untouched. Like the spiritual sensitivity is gone. Well, that's what happens when you're seared with a hot iron. That scarred area, it becomes insensitive. You can touch it, you don't feel it. And that can happen to someone's conscience. Why does God allow that to happen? Well, he has his purposes. It's certainly been one of the greatest sources of warning to God's people. I don't want to be like someone like that. When you consider the great light that was once theirs and now the darkness that is theirs, and their seeming indifference, their love of evil, you can see what has happened to them. They very often cannot. But that's what I think of when I think of this rather lengthy phrase, seared in their own conscience as with a branding iron. Men who forbid marriage and advocate abstaining from foods which God has created to be gratefully shared in by those who believe and know the truth. Now, this is probably in reference to the same people that you have warned about in Colossians, a proto-Gnostic mixed with Jewish mythology type thing. But it's awful hard to avoid making the connection. Forbidding marriage and advocating abstaining from foods. That certainly happened a lot down through history. We can find particular groups in the history of the church that forbade marriage. Interestingly enough, over history, they never lasted long. And there's, every time I've taught church history, I've sort of mentioned there is sort of a logical connection between the forbidding of marriage and the eventual downfall of a particular group. But today, we have a major world religion that forbids marriage to a class that it claims is, interestingly enough, if you've seen, we mentioned a couple weeks ago on the program, the theology of Rome regarding the priesthood, the idea of a sacramental mark placed upon the soul of a person who is ordained as a priest. They always be a priest. Always have the ability to work the miracle of transubstantiation, no matter what they do or become. And it has been pointed out by a number of people recently that some of the worst offenders in this current homosexual crisis within Roman Catholicism, this is not primarily pedophile priests. This is primarily homosexual priests. What you need to understand is there are many homosexuals in the Vatican, in the Curia, in the leadership of the Roman Catholic Church. They're called the Lavender Mafia. They've been known by that name for a long time. This is almost certainly now why Benedict resigned. He knew that there was nothing he could do. There was nothing he could do. He undoubtedly knew the extent of this and figured he'd be dead before this all came out. Well, he's not. But the Lavender Mafia, they control stuff. They have a lot of power. And this unbiblical, unchristian office of priest, which, believe me, if this was even semi-apostolic in teaching, would it not have to have been thoroughly explicated as to its nature in the book of Hebrews, in light of the book of Hebrews' argument about the uniqueness of the priesthood of Christ, which we're about to look at in another context, but keep that in mind. This is what happens when you try to show yourself to be wiser than the Spirit of God. And that fundamentally is what a denial of sola scriptura is. We are wiser. We know more. God didn't give us enough in Scripture. And so that's what you have going on there. And so Forbidding marriage, advocating abstaining from foods. What? Why did we used to have Friday fish fries in the United States? A lot of people don't remember. But it was at least a venial sin. I think there's some priests that may have identified as a mortal sin to eat meat. Now technically it was a discipline, but again, consistency, a hard thing to come by in Roman Catholicism. You weren't supposed to eat meat on Fridays, but you could eat fish. Now, I don't know about you. I sort of think fish is actually meat, but you know what I mean. Here you have all these alleged disciplines. I mean, priestly celibacy is a quote-unquote discipline. Well, look what it has allowed. I mean, wow, let's put a whole bunch of young men in close quarters with one another and deny to them by discipline the natural relationship that you would long to have with a woman named your wife. Might be some place that homosexuals might want to be in. I mean, it's just so obvious, so painfully obvious. It's just like, really? What? This is shocking everyone all of a sudden. This has been known. There have been entire books written about this, literally, for many decades. And really centuries. I've talked about the pornocracy on the program before, but just go back to the 8th and 9th centuries in Rome, and that was just outrageous, though there wasn't nearly as much homosexuality then. So you could, on one side, say that it's worse, but at least most of the popes in the past multiplied illegitimate wives, not illegitimate boys or men. Be that as it may, these kinds of external practices and fastings and giving up of this and giving up of that, etc., etc. The scriptures would tell us that, for example, the foods that we're supposed to abstain from, God is created to be gratefully shared in by those who believe and know the truth. There's that truth thing again. There's that, I've been saying to a lot of Roman Catholics online recently, you want to talk about apostolic succession? There is only one meaningful apostolic succession. It is a succession in truth. Teach what the apostles taught. Don't pretend that you stand in some other line when you deny what they themselves taught. This is the very essence of so much of the problem that's out there. Did you see the quote from Cardinal Supich in Chicago? The Pope has a bigger agenda. He's got to get on with other things of talking about the environment and protecting migrants and carrying on the work of the church. We are not going to go down a rabbit hole on this. Wow. Wow. Well, was that off teleprompter or something? I mean, ouch. Bigger agenda. The environment. Bigger agenda. Yeah, that's what the shepherd of the sheep is supposed to be. Yeah, right. And protecting migrants. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Someone in channel just said, protecting migrants from their local parish priests. Well, maybe that is what he meant. I don't know. Protecting the environment from these guys? I don't know either. But talk about stepping in at big time. That Cardinal Supich from Chicago. Yeah, okay. That's pretty sad. That's... Oof.